entrepreneurs and professionals of Tampa Bay. Welcome to your hour for getting the information, the tools, and the connections for elevating your business. Welcome to Getting the Edge with Kelly Wilson. And here's your host, Kelly Wilson.
Welcome to Getting the Edge. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm your host, Kelly Wilson. Again, so happy you're here with us. We're really excited to be here with you in our brand new studio in the Tampa Bay community. If you are looking for a great place to actually have your own show, which I know you want to have your own show. If you're looking to have your own show, if you're looking to do any type of video production, any type of filming, definitely check out WeBeam TV. Reach out to webeamtv.com, Tampa Bay Multimedia for more information. And definitely, it's so exciting to be here with you. And I have loved our outreach and being out in the community shows in the past, but this is really great to be kind of confined and no running children running past. Really excited about it. So again, check out Tampa Bay Multimedia or WeBeam TV for additional information on potentially having your own show or in any type of filming or videos that you might need. So again, really excited to be here. We are Getting the Edge. I am Kelly Wilson, your host. Getting the Edge, we're here with you every week to bring on great business leaders, business owners in the community to talk about their products and services, but our niche, my passion is really sharing their stories and really sharing information so that we can all learn and grow from it. We've got some great stories and some great topics that we're going to discuss today, and I have one of my favorite people back on the show with me today, Laura Scott, who's president of 180 Coaching. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Kelly.
I adore Laura. Laura and I have been friends for many years. We met originally back from our days working alongside and consulting for the Center for Women, and a great organization, thecenter.org, for additional details for the center. But Laura has just been a resiliency coach almost for me, but just a great friend. And we all need that cheerleader in our lives that really helps keeps us going when really everything else around us is telling us not. And you've really been that friend and that person in my life. So I definitely, you mean a lot to me. I appreciate that. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you and what you do, because you are so supportive. You're the champion for all the entrepreneurs here in the region. And you've been such a champion to a number of people here that have been, obviously, you've been supporting for I don't know how many years now.
6 years.
Has it been 6 years?
It'll be 6 years in September.
Oh my gosh.
Just amazing.
That's just incredible. And so I'm sure they're very delighted that you're continuing all the work that you're doing, but also adding this other dimension of this. What are you calling this? Is it a podcast, or a TV show? What are we calling what we're doing today?
You know, I think WeBeam TV and the wonderful John Gaston would call it Podvision, I think.
Podvision, whatever.
But it's really not just a podcast, because it's audio and visual. Getting the Edge was a radio show for years.
That's right.
And with iHeart, so it's been great to take that concept, and then I think we started the transition for the filmed production. Podvision back, I think it was October 2018, that we kind of relaunched this version of it. So it took me a while to get. I'm used to just the headphones, so it took me a while to get used to the video cameras and the lights. But John and again WeBeam TV and Tampa Bay Multimedia are great to work with.
They are,
and they've made it. It's cozy and I'm comfortable. And thank you very much for your kind words. It is a struggle to build. One of the topics we're going to discuss today is resiliency.
Yeah.
And it is, plans are great. We all have a plan, but we all have expectations as well. And actually within business plans that we create expectations of a timeline. And really resiliency that I think we all have within us kind of can come out when all else is really puttering. That's when we need to pull on it. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, because it really ties in. I want to share these stories of so many where it's not fair for me to just learn from what you've taught me and what you provided to me to keep going and to kind of endure when all else tells you otherwise. But I want to provide that to everyone else. So Make sure you check out the new website for edgebusinessmagazine.com. I'm really excited about the new site. You can watch all of the previous shows from Getting the Edge. You can actually look through all of the issues of Edge Business Magazine as well. Really excited about our last issue. This one launched late April. We had a great launch party beginning of May 2nd, I believe it was, to honor and celebrate Mullio and Carmine Ibaroni, two amazing restaurateurs in the Tampa community. This was such a phenomenal night, one of the best nights we've had, and I think for me it was fun. I've learned to celebrate even the small successes. Just each thing that we accomplish is a success, and instead of stressing about it, I just had a good time. A few drinks of vodka helped too, but
As always.
it was a great night, and I'm so thankful to everyone that came. You can check out photos from that event from our website. It will actually, I think we have some on the website. I'll link you to our Facebook page as well. But just a lot of great things going on. Obviously, every Thursday night we're bringing to you a brand new show with Getting the Edge. We've got a whole lineup of different shows coming up, and also we have a new issue we're working on. I'm really excited. That'll launch late July. Going to be a little secretive as far as what we've got planned for the new issue, but really excited about it. You can subscribe to Edge Business Magazine. Go on there today to our website for $48. You won't miss a copy. You can have our print and digital delivered right to your home or office. So again, edgebusinessmagazine.com. I wanted to also say briefly, we just launched some new partnership opportunities. We have a community partnership, which is under $500 for the year. You can have your name, company information listed in our online directory on our website. You also get unlimited promotions on our Edge social platforms as long as you provide the content. I could go on and on. There's some great benefits to it. Again, that information is on our website, edgebusinessmagazine.com. So I could go on and on. There's so much exciting things, but I want to get to why we're here today. And I learn something every time we talk. So I'm always excited when we get together. And that is, goes for really all the shows. I'm so thankful. Again, I feel blessed to be able to interview and talk to and meet the people that I do. And I do talk a lot, but I've learned to stop talking when necessary and learn and really and utilize those opportunities. So, again, Laura, thank you so much for being here. Laura's website, 180coaching.com, for additional information on Laura and her executive and leadership coaching. And tell us a little bit about 180 Coaching and what you do.
I really specialize in executive and leadership coaching, as you said, primarily working with clients from director to CEO and their teams. So I like to do not only the individual, very highly confidential one-on-one coaching with executives, but I also really love to work with their teams and do the group coaching and really help strong leaders build strong teams and help them communicate, help them be resilient through the tough, rough patches,
right,
but also help people communicate more intentionally around their vision and connect. So I do a lot of conversational intelligence coaching, emotional intelligence coaching, all kinds of leadership coaching, but I would categorize it somewhat as intentional leadership because most people who are at that level of leadership, they have the skills, they have incredible experience and incredible education, but sometimes they just go, you know what, I need to really ramp up my game. I need to really connect. And as you go up the org chart, it's more about being than doing. And sometimes you have to give up some of the doing and be a leader. And some people have a difficult time with that transition. So I help them do that, and so that they can sort of let go of the daily activities of leadership, but also engaged in a much more, I would call it like heart-centered way or spiritual way, where you're connecting through people's values to what the bigger goal and vision for your organization is.
Leadership has changed, I think, so much, right? I mean, over the years, leaders are able to show more vulnerability. Well, I think without losing their authority, so to speak. They're able to. And I think that's so important, to have compassion. You need to be a little vulnerable with your team, and I mean, obviously to stand up and be a leader, but so I can imagine that shift has kind of changed the way, or probably has made it easier because you can identify what's going on instead of, because the leaders potentially are, little vulnerable, saying, this is my issue, this is what I need help with, or this is where.
Vulnerability is actually a really great way to connect, for leaders to connect with their audience, whether it's internal or external audience, and certainly is resonating with the millennials. So if you pretend that you're all that in a bag of chips, it's sometimes off-putting. It's not really making that human connection. And I also counsel my clients against that sort of uber perfectionism that can be, at the end of the day, quite annoying sometimes to people, because nobody's really perfect. And if you pretend that you are, you strive for perfection, it's actually a block to success in many cases.
Absolutely, and I think that can go, and there is no level of perfection. And when you're constantly evolving and changing and pivoting where you need to pivot, because
Yes.
entrepreneurship and owning your own business is all about change and adapting to change,
Yes.
and seeing where you need to. So, can you imagine, I've had clients and I've worked with people that are so stuck on or on the perfection side of things.
Yes.
That it potentially holds you back.
It certainly impacts a lot of things in terms of success metrics. It impacts productivity. It impacts engagement. It impacts your relationship with others. So we sometimes strive for perfectionism, but then we realize, oh my gosh, that's not really serving us.
Well, it'd be like a magazine issue or anything that I do, or a show for that matter, or the filming, the editing piece, or anything that we might do. If I would never get anything watched if it had to be perfect.
Oh my God, no.
You'd never check mark anything. You would constantly be editing or trying to fix something. That's definitely something people need to work through and realize it's a myth.
And you had alluded earlier to sort of expectations and managing expectations, and I certainly think that that's important as our business climate sort of changes constantly and new technology comes on board, and we really need to manage our expectations about what we can expect in the future. And so certain times, I think a lot of the most successful leaders are the people that kind of intentionally lose attachment to outcome. Because if you're really fixed on a particular outcome and it fails to materialize, it can set you up for some really kind of tough moments and some real legitimate depression and beating yourself up and disappointment.
Well, and I think a lot of times when you step back from the attachment, it can almost, the outcome can differ a little bit, because I think, and I want to talk about that a little bit more. We're going to take a quick break, but don't go away. Stay close. I'll be right back. More with Laura Scott with Getting the Edge.
This is the Cannabis Podcast, powered by TrueLeaf on Radio Influence. It's an inside look and the scientific facts in and around the world of medical cannabis. Now, here is your host, Ian Beckles.
He's a successful entrepreneur, published author, top listing agent, a real estate and finance expert that goes to bat for you every day as a consumer advocate. Your host and the consumer quarterback, Brandon Rhymes.
Welcome back to Getting the Edge. I'm your host, Kelly Wilson. So thank you so much for being with us today. Again, so excited to have Laura Scott, president of 180 Coaching, with us, and learning a lot. We're talking about resiliency today. And, you know, before we go kind of back into, and I wanted to talk about, right before we went to break, I mentioned releasing kind of the expectations of an outcome. And I want to kind of get onto that. But I also wanted, you travel all over the world coaching and doing leadership training. Tell me a little bit about some of those experiences and some of the different places that you've been. Because you're not just in Tampa Bay. You are in demand all over the world.
Well, no, I mean, I wish I was more. But, you know, obviously, I do some speaking. So I speak, obviously, to other coaches and to business groups and associations and that kind of thing. And that takes me around the world, and I love doing that, because what I'm finding is a great deal of thirst for coach-centric subject matter. All leaders really want to talk about, how can I be a better coach to my team? And so what we do is we do coach-centric leadership, and we teach leaders how to be better coaches. I can't clone myself 15 million times and be all over the place. Right. But I can teach my clients how to be a coach to their team. And that's a lifelong skill that really pays dividends. And that's, a lot of it is conversational intelligence, trying to use the right language so that you don't create defensive behavior or resistant behavior in your team, and to really understand what real collaboration looks like and how it feels. And I think the most important thing that coaches can help you with is building trust. That's the biggest thing. Is we have a lot of virtual teams all over the world. We've become a global economy. Our human capital is everywhere. And it's even more important now than ever to build trust very quickly. And so through the gift of neuroscience and fMRIs and how we know what part of the brain...
fMRI.
Functional, resonating imagery. Functional, there's an M there. But it's a type of brain scan that we can actually see what part of the brain fires up in certain situations, so that we know that trust lives in a certain part of the brain. When that fires up, we know we're building trust by the language that we're using. We're engaging that part of the brain that can learn to trust. And so we know that the limbic system, what we call the reptile brain, is not able to trust very easily. It's all about survival and be safe. But the prefrontal cortex is where the brain learns to trust. And if we can connect through language, and it's not rocket science, it's brain science, it's not that difficult. But if we can connect with another individual through language that builds trust, we can make that connection very quickly. And it doesn't take years to build trust. It takes weeks to build trust.
Right.
And if we can narrow that time frame in how we build trust in relationships, it's hugely beneficial to us as people, as business people, and as leaders to be able to do that. So I'm excited about that. It's a new science. I'm exploring, and really I'm actually going with a bunch of colleagues to Stockholm in the fall. And we were the first cohort of coaches that were trained in conversational intelligence. And so we come back and meet up, and we share best practices, we share case studies.
I think that's great.
Just build on that knowledge.
You learn so much too from us all kind of sharing information and learning from each other. I think that's great, and you all probably take different things away from different
cultures.
Right. Well, and even sitting in being educated, you're going to take away something. Somebody else is going to take away something. Everybody kind of takes in information differently, right? So,
and that's what I love about being a coach, is coaches are incredibly generous with their knowledge and their sharing. And so I rarely miss a conference, because I learn so much on the leading edge of science around the science of coaching. And I'll be going to the ICF conference in Prague in the fall, and learning with a really great international bunch and some really leading experts on the neuroscience of coaching, which I'm really excited about.
Again, it's you said leading edge, and I all of a sudden I have this moment that pops up in my mind of us sitting at the Center for Women back in 2013, I want to say. Many, like I said, almost 6 years ago. And when Edge first launched, we were pretty much centered into the South Tampa community, and we've obviously grown. I would like to think we cover the region at this point, but was looking for, and one day maybe we'll do a show on that, but there is some importance to, or from, I guess, statistically showing that you should micro niche initially. So I wanted people to understand what we were doing. So, but at some point we knew we were going to, again, form into Edge. And Laura, long story short, Laura helped us. She's like, what about Edge? We were trying to come up with names for what South Tampa Business Alliance would become. And so Laura gets credit for that and coming up with Edge. And I just appreciate that. Talking about expectations, vulnerability. I remember one of the first events I'd hosted in 2014. And again, I talk about some of the vulnerability that I experienced just so that other people are comfortable with talking about how they feel. But I used to host events regularly. Edge would do events on a regular basis, and each time I would head to these events to host them, and we probably had 50 to 60 people that might show up. I literally almost had to pull over on the way to each event because I thought I was going to be sick. That's how nervous I was. And just little tips that Laura would give me to kind of talk my way through. And it's just amazing how much it helped. So
Great.
Again, if you're looking for a leadership coach, if you're looking for anyone to even kind of help you through things, and I think we all need that. I mean, I'd like to think that we're helpful here for everyone, but if you need to take that a step further, I highly recommend Laura.
Well, I think it's really important. What I'm learning about my certification process of resiliency at work taught me is that a key component of resiliency is building networks. And if you build networks of like-minded people who are going through similar things, because it can be very lonely as an entrepreneur, and I'm always looking for ways to connect entrepreneurs with other entrepreneurs. And you're a connector, I'm a connector. We try to give people the human resources they need to be resilient through the tough patches. And part of that is being vulnerable and saying, it's not easy all the time to be an entrepreneur. There's some really, really tough situations you sometimes get into. So I often will coach my clients and say, manage the risk, but also manage the expectations. And so one of the things that I learned through your experience, through all my clients' experiences, and through my own experience as an entrepreneur, is that you almost want to set up an escape hatch strategy or an exit strategy so that when the pressure gets too much, that there's a safe place to go to just decompress and chill.
Mentally or physically?
Both.
Okay.
I think it's so important to have both mental health addressed and physical health addressed. And so however you decompress, everyone's different because different personality types or different behavioral types recharge batteries differently. So in the DISC model, for example, the high Ds, they de-stress by exercise, and the high Cs, they like alone time. So everyone's going to be different,
right,
but you'll be able to figure out what your de-stressor is, but have that ability to do that. And whether it's going on a walk with your dog or going out for a run or just having quiet time to think, that's just so absolutely key to well-being and being able to just turn it off, turn all the noise in your head off. And one of the quickest ways to do that is gratitude and finding awe in nature. And we've learned from the neuroscience and positive priming that even looking at greenery, like 70% foliage, and there's plenty of that in the Tampa Bay area, or just water, going for that beach walk. Just 20 minutes of that is going to stimulate the relaxation response and get you in a better place to be more creative and a better thinker, a better strategizing leader.
Well, and that goes before, kind of going back to releasing, what are some tips that you can give us on letting go of that outcome, like expectations of a particular outcome? When you're walking into that meeting and you need to make, you need to close this deal or whatever, what tips might, you provide?
Sometimes, we get caught up as business people into like having these hard targets. Like, I want to have $1 million in revenue by such and such a date, or I want to have this amount of clients, or I want to have this team, or I want to relocate, or I want to expand into this market. I think I would probably caution against some of those hard targets. They're good to have, and they're measurements of success, but they're not entirely what makes you feel successful.
Well, and I think it's very important for us to set up realistic expectations for ourselves.
Sure.
At this point and with Edge now being at almost 6 years, I limit my stress levels as much as possible, and I set me up to succeed.
Exactly.
So as you're projecting and you're planning and you're creating strategy, I'm going to create those plans that are going to help me succeed, not fail ultimately. I mean,
Absolutely.
Although we learn from what we don't hit,
Yeah.
right? We just then hopefully maneuver and readjust, pivot where we need to. Pivoting is a big part of our entrepreneurship. But anyway, but
To
I
your
totally
point,
agree.
Kelly, you really want to create success metrics that are realistic in the short term, because the big successes are always built on very small successes, and you really want
Small
to feel
steps.
you want to feel successful at the end of every day. So you don't want to set yourself up to fail. And I've written on about this on Edge. Setting your to-do list should not be setting yourself up to fail. You should be realistic with your to-do list, and you should reflect at the end of the day what actually did get done, whether you planned for it or not, and really understand what you've accomplished and how you moved the needle that day. And some of those things are not going to be those success metrics that can be easily measured. Some of them are the intangibles. And I think it's important to have those intangible success metrics as well as the tangible ones, the ones that are really hard, can easily be measured, like revenue, like,
Right.
number of clients,
Right.
or number of, touch points with your clients. These are all important, but they're not everything that you need to do. So sometimes what I'll say to a client is I'll say, let's talk about, rather than a hard goal like 1 million in revenue, how do you want to feel when you achieve that? And so maybe you're going towards a feeling that you want to feel at
Right.
that point. And most people will say, what do you want to feel when you get there? I want to feel accomplished. I want to feel financially secure. I want to feel like I'm building something bigger than me. So that feeling is as important to
But
articulate
then we'd have
and
to
reach
identify too what that feels like, so that we know what it like once we're there. That
Yeah.
okay, that's this feeling. Well, we'll talk a little more about that. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go far. We'll be right back with Laura Scott.
This is the Cannabis Podcast, powered by TrueLeave on Radio Influence. It's an inside look and the scientific facts in and around the world of medical cannabis. Now, here is your host, Ian Beckles.
He's a successful entrepreneur, published author, top listing agent, a real estate and finance expert that goes to bat for you every day as a consumer advocate. Your host and the consumer quarterback, Brandon Rhymes.
Welcome back to Getting the Edge. I'm your host, Kelly Wilson. Thank you for being with us today. Again, thank you, Laura Scott, for being with us. So,
Pleasure.
Recapping, and great point, right? Before we went to break, we talked about setting goals. Again, I think the importance of realistic goals for ourselves. And we need to learn to be our own best friends. And I want to kind of get into that as well next. But just to recap, you had identified that it's maybe not necessarily the money, but the feeling, right? So maybe you can have that feeling at a lesser amount than maybe what you originally kind of shooting for, right?
Yeah, because really, as entrepreneurs, as business people, as leaders, part of what we want to have is not so much the paycheck, but the impact. And certainly that's true of this next generation of leaders. The millennials are more concerned about the impact that they're making than sometimes the paycheck. And we need to recognize that that's a generational shift, and we need to address that at the end of the day, everybody wants to feel like they're moving the needle, that they're having an impact, that they're making a difference, that their presence here matters.
Right, that they're leaving a legacy in some way.
Yeah, and it's even more so as you get into a mature business and you start to think about your exit strategy and your succession planning. What is your legacy? What is your personal legacy? As an individual, as a leader, as an organization.
All great things to think about.
All good things to think about and I think a lot of times what we don't do as entrepreneurs is we don't challenge assumptions that we were making initially. We hold on to those things as if they're static. But we might want to challenge the assumption about what our clients want, what we want in terms of the value we're getting from contributing to this business. Some people initially say, I want to make $1 million. I want the Ferrari, the Maserati. I want to feel like I'm making a difference. Then as you mature, as you get into your business, you might be thinking, you know what? I actually want to be a game changer in the industry. I actually want to go above and beyond the expectations of my client. So you might want to reassess what you want, because that will change over the course of your business.
And I think it changes over the course of our lives, right?
It does.
As we grow as individuals, professionals, business owners, that changes. And
It does.
and again, I think it's different for everybody. And maybe as the millennials kind of experience more growth, that will be different. But for me, I think we all go through that materialistic time frame, whether it's your late, sometime in your 20s or your 30s. And then so for me, it was getting into then your 40s where you can be more comfortable and just owning your curly hair. We kind of joked about
Yes.
that before. Or just, it's
Certainly,
different growth within ourselves.
I do values clarification exercises with my clients, and values do change over lifespan. So as, if I have a younger client, their values might be very different than the values they would have in their 50s. And so you have to know that you have to honor those values in order to stay engaged and stay happy and stay fulfilled. So that's really important to check in with your values.
Because if you think, I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago.
Oh, no. Absolutely
none of us
not.
are. So it's really, and that's what I think is so difficult, not to get off the topic completely, but when you talk to a young person, even, my daughter, for instance, who just graduated from high school a year ago, and she's, like, how are you supposed to know at 18, 19 years old what you want to spend the rest of your life doing?
And I think sometimes we set ourselves up as young people. And I remember, I had
society kind of pushes us to do that.
There's these milestone years like 25 and 30 where, a young adult will go, oh my gosh, I'm 25 and I haven't done this and I haven't done that and I haven't done this. And maybe the expectations were a little unreal for what they thought they were going to be at 25 or at 30. And, certainly at 35, I think a lot of people go through these we celebrate birthdays and we go like, oh my gosh, I'm 35. What have I done with my life? And you want to take that moment to just reflect and go back to maybe when your 10-year-old self or your 15-year-old self or your 18-year-old self and go, what did this kid really know about life?
Right.
And go back, I wanted to be a teacher, I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be, I didn't even know what a coach was when I was making those dreams at, 15. I wanted to be in the fashion business, which I did for 10 years until it wasn't my passion anymore.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important for us to listen to our inner voices and intuitions and those feelings that we have within us, because society and our families can and just the influence of community can push us and instill their values and their beliefs and what they think, expectations upon us of what we should be doing. But I think if we can tune in and be as tied into our being as we possibly can, we might have a little more inkling or a future insight. Right? Do you agree on where we're going to grow towards or to?
Yeah, in order to really be incredibly engaged over the long term, you really want to connect to your values and you want to connect to what makes you you. And so I'm always, careful to distinguish between external motivators and internal motivators. Right. Because external motivators are typically what other people want you to be doing.
Right.
Internal motivators are the motivators that come from your desire, your aspirations, your goals, and what makes you tick.
Well, and I think my family did it with me. I probably have done it with my own children, even though I've tried, not to. But what we haven't done in our own lives, or what we thought, we put that onto our children or our families.
Yeah.
And so, but sometimes I think what we think we want, we may not really want, but it's what it's been just put on us.
Sure.
That we've kind of, this is what I want. But no, do I really want that? My mom just might want that, or my father, or whoever it might be that's pushing you towards that. So, interesting.
Yeah, I think it's important to challenge all of those assumptions we're making about how we could be happy, how we could feel successful.
Well, and I think going into the millennial mindset too, it might be okay to go against and be more, I don't know, radical is the right word, but to go against the norm versus, growing up, when you weren't supposed to do that. You followed norm. You weren't supposed to make ruffles or cause any waves. So maybe
I even remember that experience in middle school. In middle school, it was all about like conforming, wearing what everybody else was wearing. And back then it was the Adidas tracksuit, or this type had to be specific Levi jean, and everybody was wearing the same, running shoes, and it looked like the hallway at middle school looked like a bunch of clones walking around. It was ridiculous.
That's so funny.
And then I went to high school, and I realized that this is the time where young people individuate, and it was okay to bust out of the norm and wear something that was more reflective of your personality. And I was always such a fashion victim when I was a kid that I would show up in some I Dream of Jeannie costume one day.
Oh,
and
my
then
goodness.
next day I would have some crazy, severe business suit on. And but thankfully,
That's so funny. I would have never known.
I'm
gonna tease
glad
you.
there are not a lot of yearbook pictures of me
Yeah,
in some of those
thankfully we
outfits.
didn't have social media back then.
Thank goodness.
There would be images of Laura with I Dream of Jeannie outfit all over the place.
Believe
So
me,
funny.
and it was the disco era, so you can imagine
goodness.
what a nightmare of polyester was involved, but it was just really awful. But I'm glad, thankfully, there was no social media then, but it allowed me to sort of individuate and express myself as a person, and I was rewarded for it. I was not really a popular kid in middle school, but in high school, people noticed that, my God, she has the confidence to rock that Jeannie outfit. We may need to get to know this woman.
Right.
It's so I
Bold.
exuded, even though I was a severe introvert, could barely look anyone in the eyes, I expressed myself through fashion. And so I think there's a time in your business career where you start caring less about what people think you should be doing, and following your instincts, your desire, your aspirations, your values. And eventually people start to notice. They go my God, this person has leadership courage. They made a decision not because it was popular. They made a decision because it anchored so deeply into their values that they could not make any other decision.
Right. Well, I think as entrepreneurs, we're disruptors, so, right?
Of course.
So we're not following the norm or what
Yeah.
people think that we should be doing. So that kind of almost makes sense as we fall into this world. Well, no wonder I always was trying to go against what everybody else was doing. You know,
Yes.
I never fit into any type of category. I didn't want to be labeled into a particular area. That's
So yeah, if you're not anchored into those values and into your primary, motivators, then you're going to go awry. You know, you're going to lose your anchor. You're going to lose your ballast. And I always joke, I use the sailing imagery. There's no mistakes, only course corrections. I
love
imagine
that.
that I'm on a sailboat on this, Sydney to Hobart race, and it's not a straight line.
Right.
It's like tack, tack, tack,
Right.
tack, 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 tack all the way through. And so it's important to understand, like you said, when to pivot, when to challenge the assumptions. The wind blows from a different direction. Oh boy, got to set some new sails.
Right. Right.
That is the norm of business today. You cannot, you have to constantly challenge the assumptions you're working under and reset those
And reset expectations.
all the time.
And because what we thought might be accurate is not. And I
Yeah.
think releasing the fact that we know it all, because we
Yeah,
don't.
we don't.
And as soon as you realize you do not, and there are other people that can help you identify and help you grow, learn
Yeah.
from areas where you might not be as strong, being vulnerable, because you have to almost
and knowing when
release.
to ask for help. I think
Right,
you hit
right.
the nail on the head. I think that's the most important thing for resilient leaders is understand that we don't know everything. And I think you're actually more effective as a leader in playing dumb sometimes and asking the dumb questions. I always say to leaders, don't bring the prepackaged solution into a meeting. Like, come in prepared to learn. Come in prepared to be challenged, to share what you don't know, and to learn. And when a leader walks into a meeting with that energy,
Right, I can imagine.
it's huge. It's a game changer. And in terms of coming, the opposite would be coming in and going, this is what we're going to do.
Right.
I thought about it all last night. This is what we're going to do. Let's execute. Well, that's a 2-minute meeting, and you've not engaged anybody in the room.
Right. And I think to get the best engagement out of everybody else is to get their points of views and
Yeah.
to make them feel like they're a part of it, instead of being and making yourself one way, putting leveling that together. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I want to talk again, I said it last time, but a little bit more on just being your own best friend, because
yeah.
that's so difficult, although it shouldn't be. But don't go far. We'll be right back with Laura Scott.
And finance expert that goes to bat for you every day as a consumer advocate. Your host and the consumer quarterback, Brandon Rhymes.
Welcome back to Getting the Edge. I'm your host, Kelly Wilson. Thanks again for tuning back in with us. Love our show today. Laura Scott, just always so fun to have you here with me. She's like my safety. You make me so comfortable. It's just that great kind of family, comfortable feeling every time I'm with Laura. So I definitely want to bring you back on. I learn so much every time. And you seem to make me happy. Like you just have that happiness. Like
happiness is a choice.
Yeah, well, maybe you help remind me that I want to be happy when you're around.
Of course.
But no, again, thank you for being here. One of the things, so I am 6 years in with Edge, and I had another magazine, history-based magazine that I did for the community years of that, and then really kind of was my own boss with in the real estate market for over a decade, but everything I've done, this has, I think, been the most challenging. And, on my own, I haven't been a single mom for the last so many years. And, through this journey. And it's, so many of us, and not just with my situation or scenario, but I think all of us, we get in our heads so much.
Yeah.
We doubt that it's, you can go and you can be in a room and everybody around you could be telling you what great job you're doing, or not that you necessarily need the gratification, but sometimes when we have those few minutes on our own in our own minds, we're doubting ourselves, or you can't really do that if you really think you're gonna, and it's sometimes now we've got these doubts, and we're playing over scenarios in our head that. One of my favorite quotes, and I'm not going to get it right because I mess them up every time, but it's, and I'm trying to think who says it. Many men spend, oh goodness, see, here I go. Many men spend their whole lives in the foothills of imaginary Alps, cursing difficulties that never existed. And I didn't say that right, but I
get it though.
Right. They're lost in the valleys of these mountains, cursing difficulties that never existed. So you're worrying about these things when some things may never even happen.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
our mind, and every time I'm around you and we've talked, you reference reptile brain and this side that. And what was nice, and that you always kind of enlightened me on, was it wasn't just me going through all of this.
Yeah.
This was normal.
Yeah.
And, that many people, and even when I told the story briefly earlier about me heading to an event that I was going to host, and again, it was nice to know Laura would remind me, I'm not the only one that deals with that. There are other people that host events, that do all kinds of things, that have shows, that that have these things that they deal with inside. So it's not, I enjoy, or I want to talk about them because if I do, obviously other people do.
Yeah, I always look to athletes, as role models for performance anxiety, right? Everybody has that. Imagine you're in the Olympics and you're, the gold is on the line for your country, and you're at the top of the high board about to dive in, or you're at the top of the gate doing the Grand Slalom and the ski event or something like that. Imagine the stress. Imagine. And if they weren't able to manage that anxiety, they would not be an Olympic
Right. And that
athlete.
goes back to the alternative. You can just keep a safe life, right?
Yep.
And keep sheltered, stay in your little box, and you never have to experience any of that. But again, one of my other favorite quotes, which I don't know, is, everything that we want and that's worth having is on the other side of fear.
Yes.
Anything that's really going to take us and give us self-worth and pleasure and just immense gratification, or build the legacy, or anything that we want, is on the other side of what terrifies us.
Yeah.
And whether it's going to that event, or whether it's starting a business of any kind, it could be I want to start a flower shop, or any type of business. Anything that we're going to do is,
I think a lot
we need
of
to learn
times
to be our own friend.
I think a lot of times you have to be your own friend, but also, as you say, you have to sort of make friends with fear.
True.
Because most entrepreneurs have this experience where I know that I'm going in the right direction when I say yes to something that scares me just a little bit. Because that's pushing me outside my comfort zone, right?
Right.
Which is important to my growth
Right.
as a human being and as a business person. So to make friends with fear is, I think, an important thing, but not to let fear rule your decision making. Because most decisions made out of fear are probably going to be incorrect, or they're going to be very short-sighted.
Right.
So I would actually err on the side of making decisions out of trust. So our brain wants to run the worst-case scenario. Just let it. Run that worst-case scenario, but use that as an opportunity to do risk mitigation. So you might think about an opportunity or decision that you're making. Your brain is automatically going to run the worst case scenario. Let it. Play that out and go, okay, how can I mitigate the risk in this worst case scenario? Understanding that that's what it is. It's a story your brain is making up. Then you can mitigate that risk, but then spend as much time or more on the best case scenario. Run that scenario and plan for that. Because we get what we expect in business and in life. And if we expect the worst case scenario, guess what? We're going to get it.
Right.
But if we expect that best case scenario, we're going to be looking for those opportunities, and they will come to us because we now have the lens through which we can see those opportunities. We can't see those opportunities with the lens of the worst case scenario. It's like Vaseline on our glasses. So it's important to understand that the brain has that negative bias. We're going to run the worst case scenario, but we don't want to fixate on it.
You know, it is just frustrating. You know, life, business, owning your, our show is all about entrepreneurship, right? And it's about being on the edge. And that's kind of where the name kind of helped derive from. A lot of the times you want the edge, you want to stand out. But a lot of times you feel like you're on it. So, the last thing we need is for our inner selves to be against us. It'd really be in our favor if you had this internal cheerleader just constantly, you can do it, you can do it. And I think we can train ourselves to do that, right? But ultimately, it automatically goes to that neck. Is that our safety net to hold?
It does. It helps us to sort of like protect ourselves from the worst case scenario. We have an innate need to be safe and be secure. So I think a lot of times what we have to do is create a core belief that actually supports us as entrepreneurs. So my core belief as an entrepreneur and as a person is the core belief that whatever happens, I can handle it. But you have to believe that.
Right.
So most entrepreneurs have a high risk tolerance. I do too. I think Jennifer Hale did this assessment called the Entrepreneur's Mindset. And I remember I debriefed it with her after I did it, and I realized that my risk tolerance was literally off the chart. It was off the chart. And I said, Jennifer, should I be concerned? And she says, well, you have a high tolerance of risk, but obviously you're successful, so you've mitigated that risk. And it's true. I have. Every time, I never risk anything I can't afford to lose.
Right.
Including my home, including, my business. I've done that in previous incarnations of my life as an entrepreneur. This is my third or fourth incarnation.
Right.
I have made those risks, but I remember saying to my ex-husband when we literally mortgaged our house to invest in a management buyout of a company, that we would drive by this very decrepit trailer home that we would pass and we go, well, if this doesn't work, that's our next home. Cool. We actually acclimatized ourselves to the possible reality that we could be living in a similar home if this doesn't go well, but we were okay with that.
Right.
As a couple, we went, we can do fine in the trailer home. Plant a few flowers.
So worst case isn't so bad. Right.
Yeah.
So in
you
your mind is
that.
Right. In your mind, you're thinking, okay, well, so this is worst case. We can handle it. So you're willing to bet on and if you're not, then don't take the risk. Right.
I mean, if the prospect of losing your home, losing your car, losing your reputation as all that business person is way too much for you to lose, then don't go there. Don't take yourself there.
Right. It's interesting when you talk about statistics or people in general, as far as the failure rate, obviously, of any business is so high.
It is.
And I think that so many people too, there's a lot of factors obviously go into that, but a lot of them go in and they can't shift or pivot and they can't, it's being adaptable to change. You constantly have to be aware of that and just managing the stress and knowing what you're kind of getting into, right?
And I think you have to understand that the self-care and keeping this person healthy is so important, that the mental health is as important as the physical health, and self-compassion is a key component of really good mental hygiene.
Right.
You have to give yourself that self-compassion to say, you know what, I'm not going to make the right decision 100% of the time. But if I can make the right decision 75% of the time,
right,
kudos to me.
Right. No, and I
I'm
think
doing okay.
Yeah, and I think it's true. And that is, even through my journey now, I'm finally at a point where I'm trying to take a little bit more care of myself, and I'm aware of things. I'm really happy to be here at this point, and that's kind of what when you keep going, and a lot of things happen, and I think in my experience, you learn to appreciate obstacles. You learn to appreciate what you had to go through in order to get to the other side of something. After you do that time and time again, literally, you'll look back as you can reflect, and you will realize pretty clearly of why a lot of things happened. Because had they not happened, you might not have went this way, or you might not have made this decision or made this decision. But by you doing so, now you're ultimately where you are. Not to mention, pretty much, you're still going to have bumps in the road at whatever level we are at. But once you get to a certain point, you can handle anything, because you realize, you did it all before, and you already have. So just a great, I think, realization and learning from everything that we've gone through and experienced versus just maybe maneuvering and adapting the same way as we have.
And I think also for entrepreneurs, at some point you have to then create your exit strategy.
Right.
And having a really strong exit strategy and having somewhere to go to after you exit, I think, is really important. So a lot of times with owners that I coach that are thinking about their exit strategy, we're working not so much about how to craft the deal, when we have an acquisition, you're suddenly an acquisition target. It's as important, to craft that deal, but more important to know where you're going when you sell. And because you could mess up a good deal if you're not ready to exit.
Well, we'll definitely have to bring you back on, and we'll talk all about, we can kind of get a little bit further into that.
That's a whole nother show.
That's a whole nother show, right?
Exactly right.
We'll definitely check, again, 180coaching.com for more information on Laura and her executive and leadership skills. And I think we have your email and phone number and contact information on the screen. But
it's easy. It's 180coaching.com, and
there you go.
It's all there.
Well, again, you know how I've stressed how much and impactful you've been in my life. So again, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Check out edgebusinessmagazine.com for additional details. You can go on and subscribe, and look forward to our next issue coming out soon. But we'll be back, and we'll see you soon on Getting the Edge. Thank you.